I'm Ann Bocock, and welcome to Between the Covers. James Patterson is the world's best-selling author. Now, let this sink in for a minute. Not only is he the best-selling author on the planet, but he puts out more books in a year than most people read in a year. He's created some of our most popular fictional characters and series like Alex Cross, Michael Bennett, and one of my favorites, The Women's Murder Club. Mr. Patterson is a noted literary philanthropist. He's given more than 3 million books to school children and the military, and donated more than $70 million to support education, and $2.5 million to teachers during the pandemic. James Patterson is a great storyteller. He has had fantastic literary partnerships, including the thriller The President is Missing, which he co-authored with President Bill Clinton. The latest partnership is with decorated war hero Matt Eversman in the new book, Walk in My Combat Boots. These are true stories, up close and personal stories of the brave men and women from every branch of our military. And I am so pleased to welcome James Patterson. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Ann. Nice to be here.
This book is honest. It is raw. It's a little different than some things you have put out before.
I think it's the most important book I've ever done by far. I have a relationship with President Clinton, obviously, and I sent it to him. I said, I don't want a blurb, but he said, and when he was in office, he went to more military bases than any other president since FDR. So he knows a lot about the military. And he said he could not stop thinking about this book for 3 days after he read it. Matt Eversman, who I wrote it with, he was the actual sergeant portrayed in the movie Black Hawk Down. And I saw Matt do some interviews, and that's why this thing is so important. When my dad came back from World War II, he would never talk about it. And an awful lot of us, we have relatives, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, who've been in combat or been in the military, and they won't talk about it. What's beautiful about this book is they talk to Matt. And we had these 40-page interviews, and then I turned them into 5- and 6-page stories. And Matt says that this book is like 85 novels or 85 nonfiction books, because every single one of these stories, it tells you, who this person is, why they got in the military, and some amazing stories from a guy who wound up being a dentist for Saddam Hussein to a woman who wanted to be a door gunner, which they said couldn't happen. And she went through 6 levels of training, and she finally became a door gunner on a Huey helicopter. So it's a stunning book. And what Matt and I did, our mission was, if you've been there, you'll say that Sergeant Eversman and Patterson got it right. And if you haven't been there, you will understand the military for the first time in your life. You will understand what it means to serve, and you will understand what it means to put your life on the line for somebody else, which is amazing. It's a very hard thing to conceive of, and that's why I say I just think this is important. I can't imagine anybody watching who doesn't have somebody that they'll recommend this to, because it's so different from any other military book. It's up there with Band of Brothers and We Were Soldiers Once and Young, and whatever. That's my 2 cents worth, or actually my dollar's worth, because I took half your program saying that.
I'm glad you did, because something you just said struck a chord with me. My father served in the South Pacific in World War II, and we knew nothing because he never talked about it. It was only after he died when we found some notes that he had made. And this really opened my eyes to things. Some of these stories are heartbreaking. And I don't know that we understand the depths of what it means to be in service. There's story after story, for instance, of servicemen being wounded, and yet the first thing they want is to go back.
Yeah, there will be stories there. There's one nurse, and she was on a helicopter. They swooped in like literally 60 seconds to get 3 wounded soldiers in Iraq. And they're on the plane, and one of the soldiers had lost his hand, and he said, "I got to get back to my unit." He didn't even care about that. He just wanted to, and it's like that over and over and over again. There's a one story about two twins, Army Rangers, both in a lot of firefights, and but separated. They weren't in the same units, and all they could think about is my twin okay, which is a movie, and yet here it is as a 6-page story. And it just, I mean, the reactions we're getting are just stunning. And my wife, who actually the lawyer at Little Brown, when we had to get releases, and she read about half the book, and she said, "I have no interest in soldiers until I read this." And she said, "I was riveted." And she said she wept 2 or 3 times during that section that she read. So as I said, I do think this is an amazing book for people to get. And actually, we had Admiral McRaven, who's a terrific writer on his own. And he did that Make Your Bed and Sea Stories and whatever. He's a really elegant writer. And he said something which I think is so pertinent to right now. He said, if these challenging times caused you to lose hope, this book will reaffirm your faith in all that is good and honorable about this country. And I think it's so relevant right now, I think.
I agree. I'm going to just say that for those of you who are watching us on Facebook, if you'd like to ask a question, we'll try and get to it. You know, in Vietnam, there was a draft. And I think that leveled the playing field somewhat because everyone was exposed to the draft then. But 9/11, very interesting because it spurred so many people to enlist.
We cover some Vietnam veterans, and we cover several people who enlisted after 9/11. And as I say, I mean, some of the stories concentrate on why they chose to go into the service. I mean, one of the things here, the next time you thank somebody for their service, you'll know what you're thanking them for. You'll understand what that service is all about. You know, when I write fiction, when I read an Alex Cross novel or a Michael Bennett novel, when I'm doing the rewrites, I'll put on the top of the page of the chapters, be there. I want you in the scene. And the same thing with this book. This is when I do nonfiction, and I did the Kennedy book, House of Kennedys, and I did the John Lennon nonfiction as well. I wanted to read like a novel. I want it to be that fast paced and books that you just can't put down. And that's what we tried to do with Walk in My Combat Boots as well.
There is a thread in this book about PTSD, and there is a struggle that happens to these men and women when they return to the States. Let's look at the depth of this problem, because I don't think we recognize it when we think, okay, now they're home.
Oh, no. And several of those stories deal with the difficulties that these men and women have when they do come home. Matt is, obviously Wounded Warriors is an issue, and it's a terrible thing, but it's much smaller than the number of veterans who are out here and do have problems readjusting. And I think if that's your situation, you have somebody that's having that trouble, or even if you've gone through that experience, this book is useful because you will read again and again and again about people who have gone through it and how hard it is. How hard it is to, there was one woman that we interviewed. She's a bartender. Don't know how I met her, but and she's great. And she was a sergeant in Afghanistan. And when she was there, she had 12 people working under her. And when she came out, all of a sudden she has these sort of, not the bartender job, but early on, and people go, this is the salt, this is the pepper. She's going, what are you kidding? I was a sergeant. I had 12 people under me, and I understand how to do a job, and I understand how to give 100%. And in some jobs that these people go, nobody wants them to give 100%. They're not used to that. When you're in the military and it's a life and death situation, you tend to give 100%. A lot of people think what they think happens is these kids play video games and then they want to go over and shoot somebody. Even if it starts like that for some of the kids, by the time they go through basic training, by the time they write their death letter, which they all write before they actually go into combat, what they're thinking is, I think I'm going to die and I don't want to die. And I want to protect the people around me. I want to protect my brothers and sisters. And I'm understanding the world, the large world, in a way that I never did. I may hate it or I may love it, but it's not what I thought it was back in Wyoming. It's a different thing. It's more complicated.
There was one story, well, there were so many stories that got to me, but there was one that really got to me. And I don't know if it was because I'm a mother. I think maybe it just got to me because I'm a human being. And it was Jenny and her son, Bart. He had had terrible problems as a child. The military was what he really found. He was in his glory, and he straightened out. That was him. Well, there's a part where she's visiting him at Fort Hood. He is up on the top of a tank, and he wants his picture taken, and she's never seen him look happier. And her phone doesn't have a camera, but she fakes it, and she makes a clicking sound with her fingers. And she said, I put my fingers up as if I'm taking a picture. I make a clicking sound. He smiles, my beautiful son, who is in all his glory. It's the most amazing picture in my mind. It's the last one I'll ever have of him.
Yeah, there's some very tragic stories here. Yeah. This is just a very short piece. This is an Air Force flight nurse. And she says, I have a full sleeve tattoo dedicated to the patients I've lost over the years. It's a reminder of what I've seen. It's also a reminder for me to remember that it's okay to feel the way I do, which gets into that thing you were talking about, the post-traumatic. She said, I wouldn't trade my life for anything in the world. I love wearing the uniform. And this book is just full of that kind of truth and honesty. And as you say, you will read this book and you will understand something that maybe you didn't understand that well, or if you've been there, or if you've had somebody come home and they haven't been able to talk about it, this will help you to understand what they went through.
Absolutely. There was another profile, and this was a dentist, and you briefly mentioned it in the beginning. His name is Ron Silverman. And he was a general overseeing medical care for troops in Iraq with a very famous patient. That was a really interesting.
Yeah, the patient.
Story.
Well, he was brought into because Saddam Hussein had some dental problems, and interestingly, what he said was in talking to Saddam Hussein, he said that he admitted that the weapons of mass destruction, he just invented that. He said it was never a real thing. He just thought it would be effective and it would fool the Americans. And and I mean, that's an unusual story, but there are a lot of stories like that. There was one where this woman who was known as the Queen of Al Qaeda, dangerous lady, she was on all the lists. They caught her, and she wound up grabbing somebody's gun and shooting at people. But what's particularly interesting about her is she was a graduate of MIT. Which is gives you an idea of one, some of the intelligence that the enemy has, but also where they come from, some of the very unusual places.
Your co-author, Matt Eversman, for people who don't know his history, can you talk a little bit about him?
Well, as I said, Matt was he was the actual sergeant. And if you remember that movie Black Hawk Down, which was that terrible thing, I think 28 Americans died in Somalia. And but he was a sergeant played in the movie. He was a big part of the movie. And the beauty of Matt being involved in this is he knew how to get the truth out of these military people. A lot of times when you do interviews, you watch 60 Minutes or whatever, and there's a sort of a veil between the person being interviewed and the interviewer, because they don't know that person very well. They're not comfortable telling them the truth, telling them everything. But with Matt, he could get at the truth from these people. They knew who he was. And he knew the right questions to ask, and he knew the right follow-up questions to ask, and he knew when to laugh and when to console people. But it would have been a bore to do these 40-page interviews, but cutting them down then into these 5 or 6 pagers, which give you like one or two really good stories and a sense, depending on whether it was more interesting to know why they went into the military, or in some cases what happened to them afterward. And the stories, I mean, there's just one that stood out for me. It was another nurse. And the story that we told about her, there were several that she had, but she was on a flight that went from, it was either Iraq or Afghanistan, and there were four soldiers who were going to die. They were dying, and she had to fly home with them so that they could be with their families in the States. So she had to fly home with those four dying military men. And there were some caskets on the plane as well, and a woman was on there, and she had gone over to see her husband who had been badly wounded, and he died while she was there. So she was on the plane too, and it's just amazing stories.
I think that when you read this book, and then the next time you tell a serviceman or woman, thank you for your service, it might mean a little more.
And most of us feel that way. We do, right now, for a lot of people, they're having trouble grasping, getting there, in terms of the government. Do they believe in, and that's a problem. And some people are having problems believing in religion. I think a lot of people still have some faith in the military, and for good reason. It's not that the military is perfect, but there are some things about it to admire, and that certainly comes out in this book.
We do have a question from someone who is watching now, wants to know, did you serve in the military?
No, I didn't, and that's one of the good things about this. I was at Vanderbilt in graduate school in 1970, and that was the first year of the lottery, and I got a 260, very, very high number, which meant that I wasn't going to get drafted. And the trick was I had to then leave Vanderbilt, after my first year, or I would get thrown into the next lottery. And as I said, the mission that Matt and I had was, if you've been there, you say they got it right. And if you haven't been there, you'll understand. Now, I understood a bit of it because I do novels, with some military people in them. And, one of my best friends from high school was a sergeant in Vietnam, and another best friend was a captain in Vietnam. So I've heard a lot of the stories. But even from them, because I was a civilian, like my captain friend, he had a lot of funny stories, but he never told the real tough ones, even to me. And there's some funny stories in here, but there's also some tough ones.
How many stories in this book?
I think there are 85. I think.
It must have been hours and hours of tape just to get it down to
it was a lot of work. And we're actually doing one now, which will come out later in the year, with emergency room nurses. And it's even more intense than combat boots. Black Book is my favorite of all my mystery books. And so I think in April, Red Book comes out. So we visit one of my favorite detectives, Harney, who we haven't seen for a while. So that's, if people are into my mysteries, that's a cool one coming. And then Women's Murder Club, I think in May, 21st birthday. Good title, pretty good book.
I know kids and literacy is your passion. I mean, you have given millions of books, millions and millions and millions of dollars. I want to know, we do know what the consequences of poor literacy are. And here we are in a time where so many kids across the nation are doing a virtual school or not. And what is going to happen? What do we all need to do to make sure that our kids can read?
Yeah. Well, the reality is, across the country right now, less than 50% of the kids read at grade level, which is terrible. It's a disgrace, really. And I've been working with the University of Florida. They've been testing a program for 6 years now, and they have that number up into the mid 80s in terms of 80-some% of the kids who go through this program with their teachers can read at better than grade level, which is really cool, and it will save lives. And so the thing is, we have the vaccine now, and we just have to get the states to use the vaccine. It works. It makes the teachers better at teaching reading, even better than they are. Holds the kids and gets them reading, and it will save literally thousands of lives. Because if you can't read at a competent level, how do you get through high school? How do you ultimately, if you can't read, how do you get a job when you get out? It's just too difficult. But the thing is, we have the vaccine. We can actually fix this, fix a lot of the problem.
We do have a couple of questions that have come in, and one is, will this book come out on audio?
Yeah, it should be out on audio now. Absolutely, yeah.
And the other was, how do you manage so many projects at once? We were talking about that because I've seen you have so many boxes open at one time. Your brain needs to be studied that you can do so many things. You're the king of
yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, I definitely donate myself to science. I don't know. Part of it is I was in advertising for a while. I ran J. Walter Thompson North America, but I've been clean for over 25 years. And you had to multitask there like crazy, and so I'm sort of used to that. I like the idea of working on different projects. One of the beauties of it is I never, get writer's block, because if I'm having a problem, I just go on to another project. And as you know, I co-write some of them and write some of them myself. So, and it's a different process. I will, even the co-written, I will write a 60 to 70 page outline to start things off. So, but I love it. I don't work for a living. I play for a living. Somebody said you're lucky if you find something you like to do, and then it's a miracle if somebody will pay you to do it. That's my situation. It's quite wonderful.
We're all lucky that you found something that you like to do. A very good question just came in, and it's from someone who says, I'm a Desert Storm vet. I'm curious if you interviewed any Desert Storm vets.
Yeah, we did. None jumps to my mind right now. My mind is Swiss cheese. I'm good at inventing but not necessarily at remembering everything. But yes, the answer is yes, but I can't give you specifics. But yes, for sure.
Well, it was interesting because at first I thought, okay, this book is going to be Iraq and Afghanistan, but no, the Vietnam, universal from one war to another.
Yeah. Well, there are an unbelievable number of vets out there, and/or families where people have dealt with vets. And as I said, my dad comes back from World War II, would never talk about it, ever, would never, no questions. He just wouldn't talk about it. And I think a lot of people deal with that. And I think a lot of vets, they don't have anybody to talk to about it. They'll talk, a lot of them, they'll talk to another vet. They don't like to talk to civilians about what went on. A lot of them, not all, but many.
Well, at first, I had asked you before if you thought if the families that had skin in the game and they had a kid or a wife or a husband who were in the military could understand this even more. And you said no. Honestly,
I think we all have skin in the game. I think we all have skin in the game. We need to understand the military. We really, and one of the beauties of this book is you read this book, you get it. By the end of this book, you get what's going on. You understand the camaraderie. You understand the danger. At some point, I'll probably do one on the police. And once again, it will help people to understand that it's just complicated. It's not simple. And if you had to put your life on a line and go up, 4 stories, and there's a domestic, and you don't know whether somebody has a gun or not, and it's dark, and that's scary. It's difficult. You go, well, they're getting paid to do that. Well, no, it's nobody gets paid to put their life on the line like that. It's just a very difficult thing. And our mistakes made for sure, and do changes need to happen? Absolutely. But we need to understand. We need to understand the military. We need to understand police. We understand, as I said, emergency room nurses, which I'm going to put out a book later in the year.
Well, we want to thank you for everything that you have done for the military.
Military people and the families who are watching, they deserve our thanks. And this gives them a voice, this book. Thank you.
The book is Walk in My Combat Boots, True Stories from America's Bravest Warriors. They are truly profiles in courage. James Patterson, thank you.
Thank you. It's a delight. You're the best.
I'm Ann Bocock. Please connect with us and join me on the next Between the Covers.